They don't care though. Like Michelle Lujan Grisham, and this is something that a lot of people don't talk enough about. She has a stepson that's out here on the streets hooked on dope. That's a young person, and she does not care. So, like, it's just be really clear, right? It's about dollars and power.
My son was like the color of this paper because he hadn't gone outside in months. I think there was a time that the boys didn't get to go outside for at least 9 months.
We could go back to what the governor did when she did this ban on firearms. In that administrative order, she stripped away all of the funding from CYFD that was doing wraparound services for people that were system-impacted youth.
The Children's Code is supposed to protect our children.
Right.
Nowhere in this does this show me that this is going to protect our children. They have predators working there who are strip searching these kids. In July, for instance, there was 196 strip searches. You want to know how much contraband was found in July? Zero.
We could go back to like 2018. There was only 30 kids in YDDC. Like where we were like trying to get the detention center closed down. We were like so close. This overcriminalization of youth started ramped back up again with this governor. We have to understand that this whole structure was founded on supremacy. And that's what we're dealing with. That is the monster that we're fighting. Right.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to Pathways to Breaking the Cycle podcast, where we are going to speak about not only our experiences as mothers, Vanessa and I, but also the juvenile justice system. We have today here Vanessa Hulliger. She is the founder of Stronger Together, Never Alone. And we have Celinda Guerrero. Do I say that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Celinda Guerrero, and she is with Millions for Prisoners and also Save the Kids. And I am Kimberly Apodaca, and I am with Stronger Together, Never Alone, and also Millions for Prisoners. And we have Chris Herrera here today from La Placita Institute. So welcome, everybody. I'm really happy that you were able to meet here today. Oh, we also have Eric Rivera from La Placita Institute as well. So thank you for being here, Eric. So let's just jump in and, just give some raw talk and speak our truths and just share your story with us, Vanessa.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. I'm excited to be here. My name is Vanessa Hulliger, founder of Stronger Together, Never Alone. Stronger Together, Never Alone initially started as a support group for families with incarcerated children. I started it just because of the lack of resources there are for people going through that process. I definitely felt alone through the entire thing. And so I decided to try it out, see if it would work, and here we are. But Stronger Together, Never Alone eventually became more of an advocacy group. There's like 6 core moms who do a lot of work. Kim being one of them. But a little bit about my story. My son Noah, he had just turned 17 years old. He was involved in a drug deal turned shootout where someone was fatally injured. 2.5 years later, 2 trials later, Noah was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 29 years in Department of Corrections. So he is the reason that I do the work that I do, just to try to spread awareness of, my story and where I came from and the steps I took in order to try to prevent this from happening. Noah was, a gifted child. He was gifted all through elementary, middle school, high school. He played on the football team. He did really well in school. COVID happened. He went to online school. And we saw a change, a little bit after school shut down around May of 2020. And he started to be a little bit more withdrawn, a little bit more defiant, just out of character for him. I suspected drug use. I'm a registered nurse, so I was drug testing him constantly. And, he would come back positive for marijuana sometimes, but nothing more. But just the behaviors that I was seeing was just so out of character. In August of 2020, he got very ill. He had a vaping lung injury, spent 7 days in the ICU, was very ill. And so after that, we had gotten him into some therapy. As soon as that happened, they wanted him to see a pediatric drug abuse specialist. And we found out it was a 6-month-long waiting list to get him into drug abuse counseling, which was insane to me. I had private insurance. I was like, I'll pay for whatever. Just get him the help he needs. 6 months waiting. And during this time, October of 2020 is when this happened. Part of my story, I found a firearm under a car in my driveway. And I called the authorities thinking it was the right thing to do, right? They're going to come in, they're going to, figure out where this came from. They're going to take him in. They're going to do something to help is what my thought process was. None of that happened. He ended up running away from home a couple days later. Again, called the authorities, thinking I was doing, the best I could. Reported him missing. I was told that unless he breaks the law, there's nothing they can do for me. They would make sure he was safe and he would be able to stay out on his own. 2 days later, I got a call from the hospital letting me know that my son had been shot and I needed to come right away. I made it to the hospital right before they took him by ambulance. And again, being a nurse, I looked at him and I truly believed that was the last time I was ever going to see him alive. Yeah. I followed the ambulance down to UNM Hospital where they refused to let me in. They were on lockdown due to receiving gunshot victims and told me to go wait at home for a call. I received a call that he had come out of surgery, but he was going back in because he was still bleeding and they didn't know from where. And I never heard anything again. 36 hours later, after calling APD probably a million times, calling the hospital, calling legal, calling everything I possibly could, I finally got a call 36 hours later from a detective letting me know that the hold had been lifted and I could come see my son. And I asked what happened, and she told me to contact my attorney, and I would be hearing from them shortly. So I had no idea what had transpired, but got to the hospital and saw my son in ICU, fighting for his life. Again, we find out later that he was involved in a drug deal that had turned into a shootout where someone was fatally injured. So that's a little bit about my story. Now, Noah spent 2.5 years in the Juvenile Detention Center, also known as YSC, Youth Service Center. I don't really like to call it the Youth Service Center because there is no services there. It's juvenile detention. He spent 2.5 years there, again, 2 trials later, and then was sentenced and now is in Department of Corrections.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I can empathize with that journey. My son, at the age of 16, used to hang out at skate parks a lot, and I started to notice a change in his behavior, and then he wouldn't come home when he was supposed to. And then I found out from his skateboarding buddies that he started hanging out with the different crowd of kids. And I don't like to say problematic kids or troubled kids because these are children who are born into survival. These are children who all they know is how to survive, you know. And so I never like to stereotype them like that. But they knew a lot more about the streets than my son did. But eventually, you know, my son being out in the streets for a year and a half, he began robbing people. He began using cocaine. I would go out looking for him. Sometimes it would be my daughter and I, and other times it would be just me out there looking at like 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd find him, bring him home. He'd leave in the middle of the night again the next day. So all those acts, he ended up in prison and he is serving a 10-year sentence now. But I want to go back to the beginning of when my son was younger. He always struggled academically and cognitively, and I always tried to find him like somewhere for him to fit in or some help for him since he was a young kid. And they made it very difficult for me to find that. And he was a very sensitive soul, and he was definitely the type of kid that was sensitive and would cry a lot, and his feelings got hurt easily. And so I feel personally that he was victimized as a child since elementary school. And then when he got into middle school, he went to Madison. And there was a teacher there that was really nice. And she actually, when he was going to school there was, I forgot what the program is called, but they go to their first period. It's a first period class before they start their day. But Maria was a teacher, and she really liked Josiah. So she really took Josiah under her wing. And the homeroom class, that's what it's called. She took Josiah under her wing. The class was for children with autism. However, Josiah didn't have autism, but he was able to prepare for his day in that classroom while other teachers started complaining about it and said that he couldn't be in there because he wasn't diagnosed with autism. However, it was still working for him, and she fought for him. But, of course, he had to go into the regular homeroom class. And this teacher called me one night. It was 8 o'clock at night, and she called me and she said, I could get fired for making this phone call to you tonight, but I need to let you know that your kid is mistreated. Teachers are mean to him. They degrade him. They're demeaning. She said, and I can't go another night. I can't go to sleep another night knowing the treatment that he's receiving. And I was so grateful for that. I was grateful for her. And so then again, I went and I, advocated for my son. My daughter and I had meetings with the teachers. I tried to find him special ed help. Of course, they wanted me to medicate him, and I wasn't going to medicate him. I was not going to do that. Speeding up into high school, they finally were able to get an IEP. Mind you, it took like a year and a half. He is a sophomore by this point, and I don't know about you guys, but when you're in high school, you're trying to find your identity, and there's no way that you want to start going to special ed classes as a sophomore, right? Because you're like, oh my God, like they're going to stereotype me. They're going to make fun of me. And that's exactly what they did to Josiah, or that's exactly what he felt. He's like, I'm not going into special ed classes. He's like, I'm in 10th grade. They should have done that for a long time ago. Well, before you knew it, of course, he started getting in trouble. And then we had an incident where there was they were skateboarding at Osuna Elementary School, and it was during the winter months, and him and his skateboarding buddy started a little fire on the playground with the wood chips. And then they all, at the end of the night, they all peed on it because they thought we're going to put the little fire out so we don't start a bigger fire. well, there was still embers at the bottom, and it was kind of windy that night, and it started a bigger fire, and it burnt the slide. And thank God for security cameras, because they were able to see that it wasn't like a vicious act. However, they suspended my kid from Sandia. It didn't happen during school hours. It was on the weekend that it happened. And that's where I feel that the stereotyping started really happening for Josiah, because they sent him to the Eubank campus, I think it's called. And they'd pick him up in a little yellow bus, and they would wand him for like weapons. So that's where I feel like what is it called? What is it called, Celinda? The school to prison pipeline started for Josiah, because they treated him like he was an inmate already. So it was really difficult for me to see him mistreated like that. And before you knew it, he just went out into the street. He didn't want to come back home. It's almost like he found his purpose and his power out there. For all the years that he went through, being demeaned, like he finally felt like he was like a part of something, and somebody accepted him, and, it was like a power play for him. So it was really difficult trying to get him back on a straight and narrow, pathway. So now here we are, my son's in prison, and he's doing a 10-year sentence, and it's heart-wrenching as a mother, and I'm sure it's hard for him. And I know daily he says, like, God, I wish I would have, made better decisions. But, it is what it is, and here we are, and now we have to just support them, right?
Yeah.
So, Linda, can you tell us a little bit about the school to prison pipeline?
Yeah. And I can share just a little bit real quick about how I got activated to, I've been organizing since I was 17. I was a street kid in the 90s. I was those kids that the crime bill was calling super predators back in 93, 94. I was a kid that was on the block on South Broadway. We were hustling. We were out there. Like, this was the 90s when there was gangs a lot. Like, we were in our cliques. And I was a push out of 8th grade out of Washington Middle School. I had my son. I got pregnant at 15 and had my first child at 16, and decided I needed to find another path, because I didn't want my son to die. Like, everybody around me was dying in the 90s, everybody. And we were seeing, and we understood. We knew very well the way we were being targeted, the way cops would come through. Since I was 12 years old, APD would come and they would stop us and they would take our pictures without no parents around, nothing. So this is like not new, right? They would stop us, take our pictures, and put us in gang portfolios since we were like 10, 12 years old. Ask us where we're from, and just like police harassment just for being outside, right? So these are things that we know, like, historically, like, this is not new stuff. This is ongoing, and it's just getting more sophisticated. Like, we have language now, school to prison pipeline, that I didn't have when I was an 8th grade push out. We don't say dropout. We say push out on purpose, right? Because we know that there's groups of kids that are being targeted, and we know that those are kids of color, kids that are poor, LGBTQ youth, and kids with disabilities. Those 4 groups get overly targeted. And when we talk about school to prison pipeline, there's a couple of things that we know statistically. So in public schools across the country, doesn't matter what state you're in, what city you're in, after the 45th day of public school every school year, they solidify their funding. The first thing that we see after their head counts, after they collect all their money for the head counts, they start targeting kids and kicking them out. And then we see kids getting dumped out into the street. This happens the end of October. Every single year, all across the country, our kids are getting pushed out of school. It happens again in May, where kids are getting ready for summer. schools ending, and we start to see an overcriminalizing of youth. So if you look at headlines every single May, every single year, without a miss, you'll see police posturing, you'll see politicians posturing, talking about, oh, kids are out of control, kids are being violent, kids are out in the streets acting wild. You'll start to see the rhetoric build up so that they can justify the over incarceration of youth that happens. And we call this the week of youth and mass youth incarceration that we organize around, because we see at the end of May every single year. Statistically, you can look at anywhere in the country, more youth are locked up the end of May than any other time during the year, except for during school pushout. And so these are the things we're talking about when we talk about school to prison pipeline, because we also know, as people who work with people that are in the adult system, is that I think that's the last time we checked, it was somewhere around 93% of every single prisoner in the adult system in the United States started out in the youth system. Wow. That entire structure exists because of kids.
Right, right. Well, I know here in our city, and I can say it just from my son, and I'm sure Vanessa can agree with this, is that, I see the kids that my son hung out with, they're all incarcerated at this point. And we see a huge rise in numbers with our youth, and it just makes me so sad. It makes me so sad. I want to go on and talk about Sam Bregman for a minute. And just the comments that he's made publicly, and just get some feedback from you guys. So Sam Bregman plans to rewrite children's code to curb juvenile crime because he says it is weak and wants tougher laws for juveniles. He said it will take the entire community along with the legislature to make a change. It's not working. The children's code is not working. Our children's criminal justice system is not working, said Bregman. Bregman believes that the public should know if someone committed a murder, regardless of their age. Changing the way we do business in our children's criminal justice system is the single number one priority we can do when it comes to crime in our legislature in the upcoming 60-day session, said Bregman. He says there was a 57% surge in juvenile gun crimes between 22 and 23. While social media is likely a big factor, law enforcement leaders say youth offenders know they can get away with violent crimes. So Bregman's office developed a list of proposed changes to increase those consequences, and I'm going to read them off. Expanding the definition of serious youthful offender to include second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, rape, and other violent crimes. Extending the age range of youthful offenders to 21 to 25 years old to allow for more treatment and supervision. Unsealing juvenile records during certain court hearings, and making it illegal for people under 19 to have any guns and not just handguns. So let's talk about this for a minute and how this affects our youth. And we're going to go to Eric. Eric, how are these changes going to affect our juveniles?
Well, okay, so the juveniles and the families themselves, right? The children's code was in place to protect children, right? And the reasoning behind like Second Street and pre-adjudicated youth is so that they are amenable to treatment, so that they have treatment, right? So that we can care for them because they are children. That's the guys that we are told from CYFD. Switching the children's code takes that protection out, and it's going to align them up with, I think, a harsher system, and then feeds into that pipeline into the adult system. Like I would say, like 99% of serious charges get, uh, they don't go to court, they don't go to trial. They accept the terms that are given and they move on to YDDC or the prison system itself. I don't think that Sam Bregman understands the juvenile justice system. I don't think that he understands the process of a family that is dealing with the pressures and the challenges of an adolescent or a young adult. Um, I really don't think that he has a good standing and understanding of like what it means to have a safe community either.
Right.
Because again, a lot of this kind of language is cycled through. I mean, I ran in these streets when I was a kid too in the 90s, and it was the same thing that they were trying to do there. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to give our kids curfews again and, you know what I mean, get the, the air raid sirens going again. I mean, I remember all that stuff. I remember being, um, okay. Oh, yeah, I will. I remember, you know, being harassed was what I wore and how I dressed and how I sounded. It was always what walks like a duck, talks like a duck, gets a duck.
Right.
Right. And it's just like it's just a reoccurring thing, right? It's a reoccurring kind of statement. And what it's going to do is give them the funding that they need to make any decisions that they really want right now. We saw it the same way um, under all these other politicians, governors, left and right. Right. I mean, it's still the same kind of rhetoric and the same kind of things. Like, if you look at the numbers, you know, crimes are down and they have been on a decline since the 90s. Um, Offenses and things like this too. There's just the media picks up more and focuses on um, you know, some of these kind of tragic instances that these, you know, youth get themselves into. Um, I want to kind of enforce also is like that school to prison pipeline, right? Like there's so much missed opportunity. APS has even charter schools. They have a like a big opportunity to treat our kids and connect them with resources. Um, the same is true about you know YSC and the support systems on Second Street. A lot of missed opportunity for getting kids like on the right track. You know, it starts with that kind of community sourcing, people that understand the culture of the neighborhoods, um, even if they have lived experience and are returning citizens themselves, there is knowledge and a rapport that is gained from like any of your children, right? Vanessa or Kim, um, if they were kind of dipping into that counterculture, right? They were trying to feel an identity that's not necessarily based in something that they fully understand, right? But if you do something long enough, you start to take part in that community. So when a young person is dipping into that counterculture, I mean, what would it do for them to talk with like an OG, somebody who really spits some knowledge to them and tell them, no, like, you know, young blood, this ain't for you. Violence and addiction and, you know, not being able to communicate your feelings and express yourself is going to ultimately leave you in a place that's not, you know, harmonious. It's not happy. It's not a good life for you. Um, and instead of, you know, doing community service and going to some gun safety course that's going to like be taught to you by cops and things. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's very hurtful what he's going to try to do. If he's able to do any of this stuff, I don't know. We did speak the other day with Senator Linda Lopez, the presiding commissioner, uh, Adrian Barboa, and the newly appointed one that'll start in January, Frank Baca. And thank you, buddy. And and their sentiment is shared with ours. You know, what I mean, that we need to take care of our communities, our families, and our youth. And um, upping incarceration is not going to do that ultimately.
Right. Well, side note, I just want to say something because it really resonated with me when Eric said, that it takes like the OGs to help. So when Josiah was out in the street, my friend Cherie calls me and she says, I know somebody that I think could really be of help to you, because at this point, I was calling APD. They wouldn't help me. Same with same thing, Vanessa. Sorry, there's no, runaway laws in the state of New Mexico. I called CYFD. I called because he was put on probation for the little fire that they built at the playground. He was put on probation for that. Went through his probation with flying colors. In fact, his probation officer loved him. But anyway, I called everybody I could think of. Well, I mean, me growing up, I'm like Celinda. There's no snitching, right? But at this point, I'm a mom, and I'm like, I'm just going to get on and start on Crime Stoppers, and I'm just going to start reporting him, because I'm either going to do that or my kid's going to die in the street. Okay. And I did feel guilty, but I was desperate. So my friend Cherie connected me with Celinda, and I couldn't be more grateful to Celinda and Clifton, because I reached out to her and she said, come to my house tonight. Gave me her address, no problem, didn't bat an eye. She said, come to my house tonight. I showed up at her house. Her and Clifton sat at the kitchen table with me, and Clifton was so gracious. He was like, we got to find your son. I'll talk to him. We got to find him. And Celinda and Clifton did, all they could to help me through that process, of helping Josiah. So you're right, Eric. It does take the OGs, it does take community. It's community, efficacy to reach our children.
Yeah.
Because going through the school system, like Josiah's experience, he didn't feel accepted and loved. He just felt like, well, you know what? I've been told I was bad since I was in elementary school. So, I must just be a bad person. So I'm just going to act it out,
Yeah.
So anyway, Eric, what are the opportunities available in our community, and how effective are diversion programs in keeping our kids out of the street?
So, in my opinion, diversion programs or just community programming services and things like this are very highly effective when they are supported, right? So, just as an example, a lot of times, a lot of the referrals that I would get previous to the pandemic were basically kind of brought up in court, but they weren't like necessarily. It's one thing to receive a referral where it's coming from the attorney. It's one thing to receive a referral from a probation officer. It's one thing to receive a referral from a judge. A lot of times, a youth or family sees that referral as a responsibility and kind of like an obstacle or challenge. From a community, workers standpoint, um, having all of these kind of people involved with the family, the individual, a community resource, working in conjunction with probation, their attorney, and the court systems, kind of puts everybody on the same page. It gives everybody the same information, but it allows for a commitment, right? Because like it's one thing to be court appointed, right? I mean, some of these kids, they're like, I don't give a fuck, man. You know what I mean? I'm gonna cut this GPS off. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. You're not gonna stop me. Um, but if you get a commitment from a young person being like, you know what, I'll fuck with you, man. I'll see what you're about. I'm gonna check this out, right? Um, and then mom's hears the same thing, dad hears the same thing, attorney hears the same thing, in court, right? When the hearing happens, or even before that. Um, the chances of them reoffending or um, you know getting locked up again is a lot slimmer than one that's just on court appointment. Um, I've been doing this work for 10 years now, and I've worked with a lot of hard kids. Um, it does work. It does work if you have, the support, you have the stability. Um, Kids will keep coming to you when they feel safe. If
Right.
they are comfortable and they are willing, like, you can do amazing things with these young people.
Right.
And a lot of the times, like, I've had like parents and stuff tell me like, yo, you did a great job. I was like, nah, man, that's all your kid. That's not me. Like, I'm just here. They're participating. They're doing their thing, and I'm just giving them more things to do. Because circling back to, like, for whatever reason a young person find themselves intertwined with the justice system, it's the same triggers, it's the same things that ultimately we are, and I say we as a parent of young adults, and teenagers, as an organizer, but I say we as in community and ourselves included are sometimes ill prepared, um, ourselves, or ill preparing our children to kind of meet some of these challenges. I was a latchkey kid. I was home all the time. I didn't have parental, supervision. I got good grades. I worked, but I drifted into, that other side. I started doing things that I thought like made me look tough and that would earn me respect and do things like that. The kids are going to do the same thing. It doesn't matter if they have a happy home or if they don't have a happy home. Um, Dealing with processing trauma will make them, um, good human beings, right? But I think the challenge is, how are we supporting these young people when they are bored,
Right.
when they
Yes.
are angry, when they are facing anxiety, when they are going through like day to day, just, sometimes we feel down. Sometimes, you know what I mean? And then what does that lead to, right? If you're not having good communication with your family, if you don't have support at school, if you don't have one of these two things, like, and you don't have friends that got your back no matter what, and they'll get in fights with you, like, you're gonna lean and be like, you know what, those are my friends, they take care of me. um it's you can't do that if you don't have contact with youth and families, like, on a week to week basis.
Yeah.
Things change,
Right.
stuff pops up. um I know I kind of went a little bit off on that one, but
It's
I
okay.
think
Can I
Well,
give you my opinion
Yes.
on
Yes.
on Sam Bregman?
Yes.
Um, okay, there's a lot going on here. I agree with Eric. The children code is supposed to protect our children.
Right.
Nowhere in this does this show me that this is going to protect our children.
Right.
Number two, his data does not match. He's saying that this is going to provide safer communities. Nowhere in history has arresting youth at this huge number, or even arresting ourselves into safety, it has never in history been true. So
Right.
his data is not true. He's not a children's expert. He was a defense attorney for police, not even children. So that's another thing. He wants to increase the age 21 to 25 to for treatment and supervision. He wants to be able to lock up children longer. If he wants to, extend the jurisdiction, well, then let's give 21 to 25-year-olds support and
Right.
resources and, everything
Absolutely.
that they need in order to become, productive citizens. Locking them up is not going to help. Another thing, he wants to increase all these penalties, like serious youthful offenders for second-degree murder, manslaughter, rape, and violent crimes, because he knows that children are amenable to treatment and they are capable of change
Right.
and they're worthy of redemption. And he doesn't
Exactly.
want that. He wants them to go to the Department of Corrections and spend longer time there. If we're gonna, what else? Let's see. Sorry, unsealing of juvenile records is just mind-boggling to me. Why would you ever want a child who made a horrible mistake at a certain age to have that for the world to see? They are never going to be able to move on from that. They will always be that mistake, and that's just insane to me.
Right. It's just more added trauma.
Well, yeah, and then he wants to lock these children up in the juvenile detention center, where let me tell you about that place. Like, kids are locked up 23 hours a day in their rooms. At one point, they weren't going to school at all. They don't have mental health care there. They are being medicated for everything under the sun. My son, who struggled with a cocaine addiction, went to juvenile detention center and they prescribed him Adderall for ADHD. I was like, okay. They have predators working there who are strip searching these kids at an ungodly amount of times. In July, for instance, there was 196 strip searches. Mm-hmm. You want to know how much contraband was found in July?
Zero.
In a span of 5 months, there was like 650-ish strip searches, and they found 5 pieces of contraband. And let me tell you what kind of contraband. 2 pens, a pencil, a note with another resident's information on it, and I believe it was probably another pen or pencil. Nothing of what we would, I guess, categorize as contraband.
Right.
None of that. And you can't tell me that a pen and a pencil were found on someone's body. This was either found in their rooms or on their clothes, but they were strip searched.
Right.
So you're putting them in these, and let's just get to the point. All of these children are pre-adjudicated. They're being exposed to all of this abuse in the juvenile system, and they haven't even been convicted of a crime. They've been accused.
Exactly.
But they have not been. So all of these children are being traumatized, abused, all of this.
Over and over.
Yeah. And then they haven't even been convicted. And then, what if they have a juvenile crime and they go through the juvenile system? They have to deal with that trauma that they've endured at JDC. And it is going to, be a cycle. Now they're going to, continue and continue. It's just... He doesn't make any sense. Nothing he says makes sense to me. Also, I don't believe in him going to high schools and telling people, I'm going to arrest you with a gun. And teenagers do not give a shit what you say. I could tell you, I have a teenager right now. When I tell her I'm going to take your phone away, she's like, okay, like,
yeah, exactly.
They're not.
Brittany had that attitude. I know.
Yeah, but they're not going to sit there and say, oh, Mr. Sam Bregman is going to arrest me. Or even them telling, guess what? I arrested Noah, and Noah's doing 29 years in Department of Correction. They don't give a shit who Noah is. They don't care. Unless you bring someone in there with experience or someone who can relate to those children to try to get them to understand what they should be doing, or, they don't want to go down that path, they are not going to listen to Sam Bregman in a high school.
Right.
That's my
Two
opinion.
things, Vanessa. There's one thing is I kind of want to give a side note on that. I also know, I think it was you that shared that with me, that he is also going to schools and sharing about how successful his son was and how he plays
Baseball.
Professional baseball. I don't think sharing a story like that with children who were not born into
privilege, yeah. You had money to send your kids to.
So, like, these kids, if I was a kid sitting in that audience and he told me that, my thoughts as a kid that's already struggling, I'd be like, I'm such a loser. I'll never be there. I'll never have that opportunity. Like, man, I must really suck because I'll never be able to do that. Because then you start putting yourself in a box where, okay, those people are blessed and privileged, and I'm just a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Right? So then you just start doing shitty acts because that's what you feel you are. Okay, I just had to say that.
No,
side note.
yeah.
But anyway, I don't think that helps kids at all.
No.
Sharing stuff like that.
No, at all.
But I want to go back to the whole JDC thing. My son was never in the juvenile detention center. However, when he went to jail, when he turned himself in for his case, another case came up, and it was when he was a juvenile. So he had to get taken from estancia to YDDC and do 6 months in there. I will tell you from my experience and Josiah's experience, and then I want you to go ahead and tell me about JDC. Mm-hmm. But YDDC was amazing with my kid, and that was my experience as a mom. They gave him therapy every week, which I was able to attend every Thursday in his cottage, or his lodge, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they call him, the lodge. I was able to have family therapy with him every Thursday. He was able to show me his room. You know, I felt like Josiah was like, oh, good, you know, I get to see my mom in a more, you know, personal, more intimate environment versus being in the visitation room where, you know, you're just being stared at the whole time. But I had a really good experience with Josiah going into YDDC and getting reform, getting therapy, getting the help that he needed, you know. I know that that's not the case for the kids at JDC. And do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, again, Noah spent 2.5 years at JDC. When he went in, it was in, you know, the height of COVID. So that was a thing in its own. I didn't see Noah in person. He was arrested December of 2020. I didn't see him in person until August of 21. So I never saw him throughout that time. We would get a 15-minute video visit on Fridays, and then 5-minute phone calls other than that. So that was COVID. But when we started getting to see him, I started noticing, we're Hispanic, and so we all have darker skin. My son was the color of this paper because he hadn't gone outside in months. I think there was a time that the boys didn't get to go outside for at least 9 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so they didn't even see the sun. They had their windows covered, stuff like that. There was a lot of missing school. Like I said, I was very thankful because my son, he was very good at school. He didn't need any help. And so he was able to finish high school there.
Right.
But there's boys that I know who were there for 2-3 years and did not finish high school because they had canceled school so much. Their laundry was disgusting. There was times that I would come in and get to hug him and he smelled like urine. Or mildew. You know how if you leave the clothes in the washer too long, that's what he would smell like. Things like haircuts weren't happening, things to make them feel like people. The soap that they used to cut costs, where it was like cracking their skin. There was a lot going on. And I know that once Noah left, things kind of went downhill. And I know this because I was working with several moms who still had children there. And the Christmas Day protest happened. They never talked about this, but there was 2 staff members on duty that day. 2 for all those children. Those children had been locked up in their rooms for days.
Wow.
They wanted to see their parents for Christmas and they canceled visits. They hadn't had lunch yet. They were behind on the meal. Nobody talked about that. They talked about how horrible these kids are and how they did this and this and this, but they didn't talk about any of that other stuff.
They didn't talk about what caused
it.
Acts.
Yeah. And it was a buildup too. It's not that this place was pristine beforehand. They're supposed to be a model site. Look at their website. It is so outdated. They talk about all this services and programming they have, and it's non-existent.
Right.
They had cameras in the showers recording naked children showering. They have cameras behind the toilets, so you can, and it's pointed straight at their genitals. We didn't know this until after the protest when several community organizations were able to take a tour and they were able to see the cameras. When I brought it up to my son, he was like, well, that's just normal. And like, you're supposed to have cameras in the shower. And I'm like,
Wow.
no, there's not supposed to be cameras in the shower. I do have to say that us moms worked really hard to get those covered. So supposedly those are covered at this point, not recording naked children, but still up.
Right.
So there's a lot that, they did rapid hiring. And during that rapid hiring process, now we're seeing those number of strip searches increasing. So it's like, what's going on here? They have a certain budget, but they can't afford to fix the machine that broke down or just things like that. I still work with the county and the new director. It's been how many months now since the Christmas Day? It's almost a year. And I've seen very little change, if any. They do say that they've increased programming, but it's easy to say you've increased programming when you had none. So that's an easy.
So what are they
say.
offering now?
The only thing that I've heard that they've had is the equine therapy, which is the horses, but that was back when the weather was warmer. I know that they were doing some drug therapy that you get a certificate for, but it was like a 4-hour course, nothing continuous.
But that's just as of late. That wasn't
anything
like a year ago.
No, they had nothing a year ago. They didn't even have schooling a year ago. So
Right.
And one more thing about Bregman, sorry. You can tell how I feel about him. Nowhere in any of this does he say how to help our children.
Right.
Nothing says, how are we going to help our children? And our children, as in, our children, our community's children,
Yes.
our, city's children, our state's children. How are we going to help our children? None of this says anything about how that's going to help our children.
Right.
So a safer community, that doesn't make me feel safer. You're not telling me. I still have 2 children that I'm raising in this community.
Right.
How are my children going to be safe?
Right.
And he gives me nothing. So
No hope.
Sorry.
No hope.
I want
Well,
I want to
had
hear
something-
from him.
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
I had something to comment about because I was at the D home for a year, and yeah, it's kind of like we were always getting strip searched. You know what I mean? Every time after searches, you would have to be a certain amount of days to be able to see your family or your brothers and all that. And then when I went first in, I had some serious charges or whatever, so I was an escape risk. So my first 3 months or 4 months, I couldn't even go to the patio because they have a patio in the pod. I couldn't even go to the patio, and I didn't see I didn't go outside for 3-4 months, and in your cells you just it's all tagged up. You know what I mean? It's all scratched up. You can't see nothing out of your windows from your cells. It is crazy. A lot of stuff goes on in there. Sometimes they would even allow us to fight. You know what I mean? In the restrooms or whatever. You know what I mean? Just to and they would just turn the other eye. It was whenever we would shower, they would sit there there's a little cubby inside of the restroom. It's kind of weird. It's in the middle, so they could see you. All they have to put their chair back, and they could see you in the restroom whenever you're doing. So that was always just weird. You know what I mean? I remember, I was there for almost a year, so it kind of after a point it got regular to me. You know what I mean? It was just another day, but after it was just the teachers there. Thankfully there are some teachers that actually do care. You know what I mean? That were actually helpful. They were always that's I didn't make it to high school, and that's why I got locked up when I was in 17th grade or something like that, and I went into 9th in there, and you know what I mean, that was my first time actually liking school or actually being able to do math and stuff like that, because after we wouldn't be able to eat chips, or we didn't have commissary, you know what I mean, we couldn't order. We'd have canteen at the end of the week, but that was if you're doing chores, you'd have to do 2 chores a day, laundry or stuff like that. And then the laundry, how she said, it was kind of gross in there, you know what I mean? There are a lot of their kids in there, you know what I mean? Everyone was young, so it was kind of all over the place, and we pretty much did everything in the pod, to cleaning, to sweeping, to mopping, to doing laundry, to you know what I mean, handing out trays, to you know what I mean, everything. Like whenever the laundry would come in, we'd fold it, we'd put everybody's cubbies. You know what I mean? Like it was never nothing like the staff was just there to just chill. Like honestly, like they would sometimes they would get their lunch, they would sit there and eat. You know what I mean, behind their little thing, and all of us like we can't eat none of that. You know what I mean? They never fed us nothing like that, so it was always kind of like it was always like throwing it in our face. And then I know a lot of the homies back then, they would get mad. You know what I mean? They'd get irritated because we're just kind of like in there, and we're all to get like they would want us to get do chores and get days every day, but it was kind of hard for us because we were all like just so frustrated with each other. You know what I mean? A lot of and everything going on. Whenever we were stressed out, they would give us a stress ball. You know what I mean? Just throw around in ourselves. You know what I'm saying? So like it was
Right.
just it wasn't really helpful at all. It was. I remember we would always talk about YDDC. We were like, fuck, like we can't wait to go there. You know what I mean? Like that sounded like the dream to us. Like we're
Right.
or the homies that were about to turn 18, they just like I just want to go to prison already. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're just stuck in time there. Um, I wasn't even able to talk to my mom because she wouldn't be able to set up my phone. So like I would just get a 5 minute call every Saturday. You know what I mean? So it was just like a lot of the people who didn't have money either. That was the only call they had.
Yep.
So it was kind of hard. You only had one hour visit every week. You know what I'm saying? So it was a lot of stuff, and we did do a lot of like that pulling like to the horses. I remember I did that once, but it was a select few that would do it. You know what I mean? It was just like people who like it was like if you were in an escape risk or stuff like that, or you could go outside. Like it was just a select few. It wasn't even the whole D home that was doing it. It was just some pods and some pods wouldn't. And then I remember like I climbed the ropes as well on the back, but again, once again that was just a select few, and that was just because I was there for so long. You know what I mean? Like I only did that once, and supposedly they should be doing that like every other month or so. You know what I'm saying, or stuff like that. And yeah, it was just crazy. It was just, you know what I mean? We all kind of just sat there and we couldn't even talk to our doors. Like once you're in your cell, you gotta be quiet. You can't knock on it. You can't, you know what I mean? You can't even take your shoes in your cell. You can't take no paper, no pencil, nothing. You know what I mean? The only thing you could have in your cell was your blankets and your books. You know what I'm saying? So like, you just get real deep in your books. You just read and read and read, and that's the only thing that was kind of like good in there that you would just read. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the library was good. Thankfully, we would go to school, and then the teachers, like I said, they really care for us in there. So they would help hook us up with books, and even sometimes when they didn't let us take it back to the pod, the teacher would go to the pod and take it to you and stuff like that. Or sometimes like whenever they put you, I used to get in trouble sometimes somewhat. So like they'd put me like I forgot what it was called, like SMP or something like that. Whenever you're just and you're like if you came out for 15 minutes a day, the whole pod would have to go down. You know what I'm saying? So like now you're like kind of messing everybody else's program for you to just come out and use the restroom, or for you to just come out and you couldn't be around nobody for like 3 weeks. You couldn't see them, or you'd come out an hour with them, and then like it was just kind of crazy. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I remember one time I accident while we got into a fight, whatever, and I picked up some new charges, and at the time they weren't using Echo Unit, and it was like four of us, and they just moved us four into Echo Unit. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, and we were in there all day, like we were just locked down the whole time because we were on SMP, and we just come out and shower. That way they wouldn't have to like disrupt the whole program from everybody else whenever we would come out, you know. But it was dope in there because they had mirrors, like, you know what I mean. In the other pods, all the mirrors, like they either don't have mirrors, or it's just like they're all scratched up, like. So in there they had the mirrors because nobody uses that pod, you know what I'm saying? So like they had the mirrors, everything was nice in there, so it was a good little. But other than that, it was hard in there, you know what I'm saying? Like, and at the time I was only 15, and I was like one of the youngest ones out of everybody, so like it was kind of difficult, but you know what I mean. At the end of the day, you gotta get through it, but it was just like there's a couple staff that did care about you, know what I'm saying, but they never lasted. They would only be there for a little bit, and they'd be like, "There's nothing I could do about it," you know what I'm saying? Like they could tell there's nothing they could do about it, so like they just end up giving up or whatever. But there was a select few that did actually care, but you know what I'm saying. Other than that, they're just kind of there, like they're kind of like bullies in a way, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of them are cool. I have cool memories with a lot of them, but a lot of them are kind of just there to feel like they have the power, you know.
How did that make you feel, like being in there, and like you were saying, you guys would sit there and they'd eat food in front of you guys, and you guys didn't even get fed well. Like, how did that make you feel,
It was,
like mentally?
personally, it just be mad, you know what I'm saying? Because whenever we'd get our special foods, maybe for Thanksgiving or like or Christmas or whatever, they would be eating out of that food as well. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, damn, like we can get some of your food, but you guys are getting out of our food. You know what I mean? That's supposed to be feeding us. Like
Right.
we wouldn't even be able to get seconds because the staff would be eating it or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes the people in the kitchen were cool. You know what I'm saying? And they would sometimes hook us up with extras or whatever. And sometimes the staff would eat it. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we didn't
Right.
have enough for us. So then that's whenever us as young, you know what I mean, as young kids, we just started taking from each other. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we just, in a way, it just kind of it had to be
It's
like
going
that.
back to survival
Yeah, you know what I
again.
mean. Like I remember sometimes we would never have a meal that would that would fill us up. You know what I mean? There's a dude that was like 6 feet in there, and I was like 5'6", and we're eating the same meal. You know what I'm saying? So like, how is it like fair
Right.
to him? And you know what I mean? Like people like it's just, and then whenever you're underweight, they just give you protein shakes. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Jesus.
it's just kind of it's just kind of our snacks are just like apples and stuff like that. Like we never
Right.
get like real like chips or nothing like that. You know what I mean? It's just kind of, and like I said, to get days up and to be able to do good, like you just had to do chores. So we
Right.
wake up, do a chore, and then before on the second shift we do a chore, and then that was it. You'd be able to stay out longer and stuff like that, and it was just yeah. So it was just, you know what I mean. But it would get us all mad whenever we would see everybody eat, or like I remember they would be always be eating wings or something like that. You know what I mean? You could smell it. You know what I mean? Like you could see it
Oh
and everything. It was
God.
just, and us being in there, we're like fuck. Like sometimes we would sit there and mess around. Like oh, what if we just go and snatch it or whatever? You know what I mean? What if we just go and get it and lock up in our room and you know what I mean? Because some of them were about to go to prison right after. You know what I mean? A lot of us were facing murder charges at the time, so we were just planning on going straight to prison right after. You know what I mean? A lot of
Right.
us we didn't really think of like getting out or nothing like that. So it was always just like whatever is in the long run better. You know what I mean?
Right. Let me ask you a question, Chris, going back to the whole Sam Bregman thing. If you were a student sitting in the, what do they have, like the cafeteria or wherever they hold, yeah,
Yeah.
and you heard him share what he shared about, well, you could be a professional baseball player. My son is, and I think what did you say? What else was he sharing about?
Like, I'll be the one to prosecute you.
Threatening.
Right.
If you come with a gun.
Right. What would be your mindset? Like, what would you be thinking if you're sitting in that crowd and he's speaking that to you?
My mom can't afford that. You know what I mean? Like I grew up in a single with my mom being single. You know what I mean? So every time they would bring like sports up at schools, you'd hear, oh yeah, you have to pay for your clothes or whatever, your cleats and shit. You know what I'm saying? So I'd be like, damn, like that ain't me. You know what I mean? Like that excludes me right there. Like that was always just my thought. Like if he would have said that in my head, I would have just been like, you know what I mean? Like obviously I don't got no money to pay for that. You know what I mean? And at the
Right.
time you're being young, you don't, you know what I mean? You can't have no access to money unless you're out there in the streets or, you know what I mean? When my mom didn't have any, like I had to go out there or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like I was never in sports for that same reason. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
every time they bring something up like that, you have to pay for this or you have to pay for this, like the amount you're gonna play or whatever. And it was just like there is never like nothing for us to do. You know what I'm saying? So it was always street time for us. You know what I mean?
Right.
I got into the streets when I was young. I was 11 whenever I just started doing everything. You know what I mean? Like it was just being out on the streets. My older brother was in and out as well in the juvenile system. He did 2 years in YDC. I remember going and visiting him, and I remember visiting him, and it was just like we'd have 4 hour visits and everything. You know what I mean? We were able to get stuff out the machine slot and all types of stuff. You know what I mean? And but yeah, like it's just we never had that. You know what I mean? We never had that luxury to be able. Sometimes that's why I didn't want to go to school. You know what I'm saying? I'd be wearing the same clothes and shit like that. I'd be like, fuck, that's embarrassing. Like you say, whenever you get older, middle school comes up, and I used to go to Los Puentes, so it was like everyone's in one. You know what I mean? So all the bigger homies are there too. So I'm like, damn, like I don't want to be wearing the same thing as yesterday, or you know what I mean, the same shoes. Like ever since my brother, like I never had no Jordan like that until the day my brother got locked up. You know what I mean? And he went down for a minute, so I was able to keep kind of most of his stuff. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the
Right.
time where I was like, oh damn, you know what I mean? But other than that, I didn't have it like that. You know what I mean? It was always, but in a way, it didn't make me feel too left out because I know there's a lot of us that was going through that. You know what I mean? It
Right.
wasn't just like, it wasn't just me. I would see everybody like, fuck, like just getting day by day. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, we'd all be taking the bus after school, the public bus. You know what I mean? I take 2-3 buses just to get home, and it was just like, because I didn't want to go to an APS. You know what I mean? It was always APS always felt way more like like they would exclude you for real. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
exactly.
So charter schools were always kind of where it was at, but other than that, like it was just a money issue like that. Like I wouldn't have been able to be in those sports. I never had an opportunity like that to go into. You know what I mean? Like how could we be people like that if we don't have nobody to lead us that way? You know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
everyone needs like I never had a positive role model. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
my brother was always my role model. You know what I'm saying? And it was just I just wanted to get respect. That's all I cared about. You know what I mean? I was young. I just wanted respect. You know what I mean? That's all I ever wanted. And
Just
whenever
get put on.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, whenever I got locked up, I was like, damn, I got the respect. You know what I mean? People know who I am, but
yeah.
at what cost? You know what I mean? I
Yes.
done lost it all. Like I felt that's how I felt. You know what I mean? Like in a way, I was 15 years old when I was locked up, and yeah, I had to grow up fast. You know what I mean? I remember thinking all that, and it was just down. Like it was crazy for me, cause yeah,
Well, I mean, I can remember I was in school, high school, late 80s, early 90s. I graduated in 1990, so I'm a little older, but I remember feeling that way, Chris. I remember feeling like looking at like the people who had more money, people who lived, because I lived on like 75th and Central,
right,
and then I had friends who lived on the Bluff or in Laurelwood. Laurelwood was like considered like you had money, right? And I remember going to high school and thinking the same thing, like, God, look at they're wearing Jordache jeans. My mom takes me to Kmart, like, I want some Jordache jeans. I didn't get that stuff. And I can't imagine for your generation what that feels like, because nowadays, if you don't have Gucci belts and Gucci slides or
right,
Louis Vuitton, you're not with it. So
right,
I can understand completely how that must feel, and that makes things a lot harder too.
right.
Let me ask you a question because I'm curious. How much, and I'm not saying, I know that there's, and I'm not saying all rap music is bad. I'm not saying that at all. But it's just from a mother's perspective. In what way did the rap music that talks about licks and talks about guns and talks about all the negative stuff influence you?
Well, in a way, I kind of always seen like the perspective of that. You know what I'm saying? And me personally, it kind of didn't really do too much, but in a way, it kind of did. You know what I'm saying? And then now, that I always talk about with everybody else, with the younger generation, like my little brothers and stuff like that. I have three little brothers, a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, right? So like, and you could tell how it influences them. You know what I mean? Especially whenever you've never lived that life,
Right.
whenever you've never been put in that situation, whenever you didn't have to grow up like that. You know what I mean? Whenever you didn't grow up hard and us like we don't even like to talk about it, you know what I mean? We don't even like to think about those hard times, you know what I mean? So like, and them, they never been through that, so them hearing that is just something different for them. And that's they see all these like people who are supposed to be hard, or all these people who they think is hard, and they see their past, and it's like, damn, that's all they did. You know what I mean? And it's just really it's just really influencing the youth in a bad way. And
Right.
a lot of people try to say it doesn't, you know what I mean? And a lot of people try to say it isn't, but in a way it does. And for a minute, I sometimes even have to just get away from all that music, just because it gets my head too much. Like, you know what I mean? Like just
Right.
boom, like this, that. You know what I mean? And it's just too much sometimes. And but like I say, a lot of kids, they didn't grow up hard like that, and they didn't have to grow up like that. So to them, they're like glorifying it. You know what I mean? To them,
Right.
they just want to be in those shoes. and
Yeah.
and but yeah, it does influence them bad.
Well, my son said that before they would go do a lick, that they'd always listen to like a song like that, and it would like pump them up. So I was just curious if it.
Yeah, there is some time like that, like put on some King Bon or something. You know what I mean? You just
Some
feel,
step of music, some
yeah,
drill
you know what I mean? You
music.
just feel kind of like just get in the mode.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I
yeah,
wanna chime in on that if it's okay.
Yeah.
I have a few notes. I just wanted to just
Yeah.
offer some things. So back to Bregman, just for political contexture, I just want to add a little bit more. So I just want us to be really clear that this is not driven by Bregman alone, right? So we could go back to what the governor did when she did this ban on firearms. Remember this a couple of
Yeah.
years ago?
Right.
That administrative policy was actually never about the guns. It was about our kids
Right.
and over policing. So in that administrative order, she stripped away all of the funding from CYFD that was doing wraparound services for people that were system impacted youth. And so before that, right? So we could go back to like 2018. There was only 30 kids in YDDC. That's or 28 kids during that time we had the numbers, we had almost got to right Eric, like where we were like trying to get the detention center closed down. We were like so close. The numbers were so low, and it was working. Shit was working, right? This overcriminalization of youth started ramped back up again with this governor. So I want to just be really clear that this governor is very pro police and very pro prison, and has been on that narrative since she got elected. She's not a progressive. She's not none of the things that she tries to attest to herself. She's the person who appointed Bregman in when Raul moved up to Attorney General. So let's just be clear about what the political chess game that was at play when all of this shit was going down. This is a devised plan that's been playing out over years. And so she stripped all the money from there, and then she put, I think it was $250,000 in that administrator, and it still stands, into state police to come to Albuquerque and over police our hoods in Albuquerque, so that we can get another layer of cops into our communities to over police us. So we have to understand in Albuquerque, we have APD, we have sheriffs, BCSO, we have state cops now because she pushed them out into, we have feds, we have, you name it, we have it going on, right? We have every level of policing. They just expanded ShotSpotter all through downtown and into the South Valley. Like, these are the things that we're not, this is where it starts, right? The over-criminalization, the over-surveilling, the over-policing that's happening. We have sheriffs that were staked out around the middle schools in the zone that were stopping kids and interrogating them and telling them, oh, work for us, you could be a snitch for us. And if not, we're gonna arrest you, right? Threatening them. State cops were doing that. Wow. So this agenda's been at play. We've been talking to families that have been impacted in the zone who have been having these experiences with state cops after she pushed them all into our neighborhoods. And we have to remember also that state cops are used to sitting on highways and giving traffic tickets. Mm-hmm. They're not used to being in our communities, in our neighborhoods. And APD's been importing cops that aren't from here. So there's a lot of things that are happening under the policing structures that are also playing a role into this, that they're already ramping up. Right. During COVID, the biggest amount of money that has been put into cops since the crime bill in '94 that happened during COVID. So Joe Biden, when he passed the COVID money, all of it went to local police. That was his response to the uprisings when we were calling for them to be accountable for police violence. You have to remember all those things were happening here, right? We had an I Can't Breathe here too. Right. Vicente Viela was murdered saying I can't breathe inside of MDC. And at the same time, Ben Baca, that same year, was murdered at the Walmart over there on the west side, yelling, I can't breathe. So we already were dealing with those things, those same holds, those same police kind of murders. And we were leading the uprisings. And then we saw this double down, right, that happened against our movement, or the defund movement, because it was effective. People were waking up and being conscious and understanding these are real problems. But I also want to say, like, all children are children. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where, if you're the baby dumped off at the fire station and nobody wanted, like, all kids are kids. It doesn't matter what trauma, what things we've experienced. And I know as young people, we grow up too fast. A lot of us grow up too fast. And when you're in survival mode, like you talked about, and you have nothing to lose, it's real easy to be reckless. Right. When you don't think you're going to live very long, when you don't believe you're going to live past 18 or 21, or you know that it's either death or prison is my rite of passage, it's real easy to be reckless. And so we have to also understand that state of mind of survival, of that comes, it stems from trauma. Right. Because poverty, like we've been talking about, poverty is trauma. Our domestic violence in our families, substance use, us being kids having to go to prisons and visit our loved ones is trauma. Yeah. These things are all trauma that we're carrying. And if we don't have a way or anybody helping us to vet that out, and we don't believe we're going to live very long, it's real easy to turn on some drill music and be like, yeah, they're singing my story because they're living that too.
Yes, because they relate. It's relatable.
Because those kids that are making that music are also living that life. But we also have a culture, a capitalist structure that is actually feeding that, right?
Yep.
Because all of this is intentional, and we have to really remember that, and that these are rites of passage.
Right.
But I also just want to, pivot back into the MLG thing. Like, we know that this is a governor's agenda. When we did the probation and parole reform bill and got it to her desk, she didn't sign it. We got it through the House, and she's always been on this. And so we have to not just be calling out Sam Bregman, but the entire structure behind him that is arming him to be able to do this.
Yeah.
She just held a special session this summer trying to get some of this stuff through. And community went up there and shut it down. But this has been ongoing for years and years and years. So I just want us to be really, really clear about that. And back to what Sam Bregman was saying, scared straight, this going into high schools and trying to scared straight our kids, that's never worked.
Right.
That's never worked. If you're a kid in the struggle, I don't care what you're talking about. You're the fucking police. And
Right.
we don't even rock with you.
Yeah.
We don't fuck with cops.
Right.
DA, who are you even talking to? You're not talking to us. Because we already don't fuck with you.
Right.
So, like, this is what this whole, like, thing that's, and I'm going to use the term rhetoric because that's what it is. He's building a rhetoric, right, to try to convince a population that has access to power, money, and voting, right, to be able to push this agenda. And like I said, this is all well structured.
Right.
And this is not new. This has been going on. So there's a loophole in the 13th Amendment that says slavery does not exist anymore unless you're duly convicted of a crime. And we have to understand that that's still at play. Mm-hmm. Like he was explaining the labor, right? All this money into incarceration, but they don't even pay people to come in and do labor because they have a slave force
Right.
that is existent behind the walls that's already doing that.
Right.
And here in New Mexico, you can look at from Department of Corrections on down. They're doing the laundry. They're the electricians. They're the HVAC in the prisons. They have prisoners who run the payroll for the COs. Yep. They process payroll. They do the administrative stuff. Like every single job is exploited. And then you get into the stuff that's for sale. That the manufacturing that happens in prisons and jails. All their art gets taken and sold. All the furniture that they're making up at the north. Like we have on staff in the governor's office, they have a position that is a salesperson, a sales and marketing person for DOC that sells our people's stuff that they produce behind the walls. That's their job, is to sell for profit. And so this is a very, very profitable structure. And that's what we're actually talking about. Our prison numbers in New Mexico have been going down since all of the work that all of us have been putting in tirelessly for years, trying to curb some of this stuff. And the numbers were going down in the adult prisons, and now they're looking for a new set of population to repopulate all those beds. Because they have contracts that haven't expired yet in private prisons, and every single bed needs to be full for them to, or else they have to still pay, or they get sanctioned. And so they need bodies for those beds. Mm-hmm. They don't care where they get them from. After Donald Trump was elected, private prison stock went up 300% that week. Damn. And it's because they're targeting kids and they're targeting undocumented people. This is bigger. This is bigger than Sam Bregman. This is bigger than just Michelle Lujan Grisham. This is structural, and it's been at play for many, many years since this land was stolen from the people, the original people here, since it was colonized. Like, we have to understand that this whole structure was founded on supremacy. And that's what we're dealing with. Right. That is the monster that we're fighting.
Right.
So I just want to,
Well, I want
Put all that
to
on
make
the
a
table.
comment because I read in an article, MLG had made a comment and said, "I don't care if the person gets reformed or not. At least they'll be off the street for 5 years." So that comment in itself, I was just like blown away. I was like, she did not say that. Like, you know, so I mean, that shows you right there that they're not about reform. They don't care. You know, they just want to lock people up, and that's it.
Well, and all these juveniles, right? They're none of them are doing life sentences. They're going to be back in our communities at some point. Like, where in anybody's mind is it to not give these people, these children, the resources, reform, to
Right.
rehabilitate, because they are coming back to our communities.
Right.
And maybe they'll date your granddaughter one day, I mean, it just makes no sense to me on why they wouldn't want these kids to get I mean, yeah, you're right. Everything you said.
They don't care though. Like Michelle Lujan Grisham, and this is something that a lot of people don't talk enough about. She has a stepson that's out here on the streets hooked on dope. That's a young person. She don't even talk about him or acknowledge him. But he's out here. And that's her kinfolk. And she does not care. So, like, it's just be really clear, right? It's about dollars and power. Mm-hmm. It's not about the people. She does not care about the people. The structure does not care about the people.
Right.
Well, like I was telling you earlier, like, I've always, like, known it was, like, a messed up system. But I guess it was just more in the back, right? I wasn't in it. So
Right.
how did it affect me?
When you're not engulfed in it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah,
I know, I get it. But when you are in the system, it's mind blowing how fucked up it is. And
Yeah.
like, that's just, I was telling you that earlier. Like, yeah, I was never in the system. So I had no idea how bad it was.
You know, I will say I went to the D home when I was 16 years old, and I thank God, honestly. Kudos to Yvonne Harris. She's no longer a juvenile probation officer, but she does work. I think she works for like the federal government or something, but she was my probation officer. And if that woman wouldn't have invested the time, she like literally became my best friend. If she wouldn't have invested the time she did with me and told me that I was capable and that I was able to be successful, I probably would not be where I am today. And it's kind of like what Chris was saying, you know, like the teachers. You said there are some teachers that care. There are people in there that care. There's more people that don't, but there are people that care.
But also that like a caring adult could have come from anywhere.
Right.
Right, in the community.
Right.
It didn't have to come from that structure.
Right.
And we can build that. And that's
Yes.
what our kids actually need, something that's outside of that structure, because
Right.
that puts a label on them and creates a record that follows them. And like he's trying to open it up now so that it can be used against them in employment, right? And where they could live when they are adults, what kind of college funding can they get? It's going to be weaponized
Exactly.
forever.
To keep them
Yeah.
down.
Yes.
Down.
So it's like a by design creating second class citizenship, which is also at play, right?
Right.
When you're convicted of a felony, you're treated as a second class citizen. And that's the stuff that we're actually dealing with. But I do want to say something about the conditions that we're talking about, right? And like a big acknowledgement of if that was happening in your home, right?
Yeah.
If that was happening in your home, if you were stripping your kid and starving them and abusing them and locking them in a small room
23 hours.
23 hours, if you did any of those
Not
things,
sending them to school.
you
Right.
you would be criminalized,
Yes.
right? And your kid would be removed from you because it'd be called abuse and neglect.
Right.
And you would be punished for it. So it's just so much about the hypocrisy,
Yes.
right, of the system, and why, like, that's how we know that it's doing what it was designed to do. Because
Right.
it's creating conditions that everybody in the whole humane society says, wait, that shit ain't cool. We need laws to protect kids from that kind of abuse, except for when they're criminalized, right?
Right.
Except for when somebody becomes a slave to the state.
Right.
Yeah.
When you become property of the state, that's what you are. And so then nobody cares because now you're a second class citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so you're written off. But all we're doing is, right, creating all the trauma and mental health disorders that people are going to have to carry when they come home.
Right.
And
making
working
it
with
worse.
people coming home, man, we're all fucked up out here.
Well, and they
is
make it hard when they come home too,
Yeah.
because they can't find housing, they can't find employment.
No. And you've been gone for 20, 30 years, and you're coming back to a society that is unrecognizable.
Right.
And every single door is being closed on you. You're being told you can't live places, you can't live with your family if they're getting housing assistance, you can't go to school, you might not be able to buy a car, you can't get loans, you can't buy life insurance, you might not get access to vote. You can't do all kinds of things.
Right.
Well, and like the community organizations that we like know well now, I had no idea any of them existed. And I was, before I started Stronger Together, Never Alone, we had already been in the process for 2 years at JDC dealing with all this. No clue that any of these organizations existed. And then, and then I get pulled into all this stuff and I see how much resources, and I'm like, why wasn't any of this given to me even when we initially went into JDC? Like, why, how come I didn't know anything about any of this? So that's one of our big things now, is trying to reach people when they're initially in the system, to get them connected with all of these community resources in order to, help them through the process.
Right.
And, even the family resources, everything we can do to help these people through the process is, that's our goal now.
Right.
But
No, but you're right about that, Vanessa. I wasn't made aware of any of it either until I was introduced to Celinda. I felt hopeless, honestly. I felt alone in the world. I was like, who is going to help me? Where can I find help? I thought the police, APD was supposed to help me, but they didn't help me.
Yeah.
Nobody did.
No.
Nobody helped me. Organizations like Celinda's
Yeah.
is what helped me.
Well,
and then
we're the people.
Right.
We are the impacted people. So we're like by us, for us, with us, and
Right.
nobody's paid, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
we just out here hustling for our people,
Right.
and so that's why, and the structure doesn't care for us because we're abolitionists. We don't think it should exist. We understand that should not exist. That should have been abolished. Slavery should have been abolished. Indentured servitude should have been abolished, right? And so we're still working to dismantle those systems, so they don't rock with us. So there was times when early on when we would try to leave pamphlets for POs, or just be like let us help people, families that are in, and then they know that because we want to abolish their jobs.
Well,
we think they shouldn't exist.
We've seen that now too, because we go and stock visits at JDC to try to get new families. And knowledge is power for me. I think
Yes.
that the more you know, the more
Absolutely.
you can do. That's been forever. But these families, if they knew even half the stuff that I've learned through this process, it can help their process.
Right.
And now we're all hiding in the parking lots, handing out our information because they don't want us there.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want moms like me calling every 2 seconds to get
And
things
disrupting.
done. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It's so
definitely.
important.
Well, Eric, going back to you, I have another question. What should be the main goals of juvenile justice?
I think taking a step back from juvenile justice, right? We want safer communities.
Yeah.
We want successful young people, and to be a part of this healthy community, right? So for juvenile justice, I think that a step in the direction that actually teaches life skills, real opportunity, um, tangible exchange for participation, ownership, true identity, um, is where we need to take it, right? Because I think Barrios Unidos in California, they say nothing days of life quicker than a paycheck, right? You get, and it makes sense to me, right? Because I think about my my history and my experience and all the stuff that I was doing and getting caught up with, ultimately, like, you know, I had to find stability. Like, I had to start working. I had to move out of my parents' crib. I had to do so many things. And it was me kind of taking that on without support, without having opportunity to walk towards. I mean, I think that you can't get away from consequences when you know people are getting hurt or when property is being damaged or stolen, right? Like, we have to make sure that our young people know that that is not the way that you are successful in life, right? If you're going to hustle, then make it legal and, you know, offer something to the world. But without that partnership tied into structures, systems, community, and by individuals that are known and have a history and experience that they can share to give perspective and earn rapport to people that are kind of struggling with that to begin with. Um, it's it's a broad kind of what I think juvenile justice means, but we need paid internships, paid apprenticeships, certificate programs, mental health, emotional health, sports, just you name it, whatever a kid is trying to get into, we've got
Right.
to have more support for them on the outside so that runs parallel with their own responsibilities and challenges. A lot of times they may be getting good grades, right? A lot of times they have a strong home, right? But do they communicate well with their parents? Are they able to share when they're not, you know, feeling all right, or when they're feeling shamed, or when they're feeling sad, or when they're feeling anxious about something? I think it's really hard to, you know, learn those skills while you're still in the home because parents mean well. We mean well. We want the best for our children.
Right.
Um, do we approach that right way? I mean, and what is the right way? Um, Sometimes it takes an outside resource of some place that is um, able to see both sides of a situation and offer an honest opinion to both. Um, and so, yeah, I think more partnerships, but really tangible resources that are supported financially. Um, One of the problems of, you know, YDC has been staffing, right? They're trying to get all these people in there and these jobs, right? And they've had hiring fair after hiring fair, rapid, like dropping the bar of who they're asking to come in, asking other COs that work with adults come in. Um, it's like that's not going to work. You need caring individuals who give a fuck about your kid and that want to, you know, support them. And they don't want them to see, they don't want them to be in there. They're not trying to continue and graduate them to other places. Um, and if they can't fill these positions, like maybe they should give us some community folk to get up in there and be navigation for people that runs parallel where they don't have the ability to um, uh, violate them, right? They don't have the
Right.
ability to, like, their primary role would be support
Right.
in the home, you know, doing domestic types of things, open opportunity, and that would be like, for lack of a better word, like the community report, right? Not the probation report, where a young person has the choice, you know what I mean, to make that commitment for themselves. um and let me ask this to Chris, right? Like, um I was at the university when you came back for YRC, right? So working with Jonah, right? Like all the work that you guys work together, or having Eddie around, or, you know, Sadiq here and there. I mean, why did that work for you? You know what I mean? Like, what was it that was so special, or what did you confide, or what was your opinion about the approach from a community standpoint and support?
Well, at first, I had to go to the YRC just because that was my, you know what I mean? That was my, to get out, that's what I had to do and complete. But then, like, at first, I didn't like it, you know what I mean? I just went just to get it done. And then, honestly, Jonah was real. Jonah, time like after time, he was always just kind of like pushing me and pushing me. You know what I mean? Pushing me and pushing me to do better. And he was always just there, like just kind of hearing me out. You know what I'm saying? I kind of didn't like. We both grew up different. Like we weren't like, you know what I mean. He wasn't like kind of out there like I was and stuff like that. But he would always just kind of be able to like talk to me. You know what I mean? Be able to listen to me and be able to just, you know what I mean, kind of in a way, you know what I mean, be that type of like therapy that I needed in a sort of way. You know what I'm saying? And when I would see people like Sadiq, you know what I mean, who done prison time, you know what I mean, for, like are from the hood, you know what I'm saying, like and is from out here, just kind of like it'd be like, damn, like these people are like me in a way, you know what I'm saying? Like they all been through it and done the most and kind of just changing their ways now, you know what I'm saying? And at the time I was young and kind of just didn't care in a way, but Jonah was always just there. He's like a mentor to me, you know what I'm saying? Even whenever I graduated from that, I didn't really go back to La Placita that much, but Jonah was always, and to this day, Jonah's still in contact with me. You know what I'm saying? He had his business out here, and he would call me up sometimes if I could work with him, get some money in my pocket. He would always check up on my family. He would always, you know what I mean? Like, always just to this day, like, I was just talking to him the other day, and he still checks up on me. He lives in Texas now, you know what I'm saying? And he always tells me he has land out there, and he's like, whenever you're ready to come out here, he always tells me whenever you're ready to come out here, and it's just like to have someone like that, you know what I mean? I never had no positive role model, like I say. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Jonah was always just he was there. So I was just
Oh,
like, you know what I
I
mean? It
love
was it
that.
was quite fuck with Jonah, you know what I mean? To this day, you know what I mean? I think that's what just made me stay, you know what I mean? That's what helped me out with everything. And then now that we talk and everything, it's like um, he even tells me whenever they referred you, they were like, oh yeah, we'll be back. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just to refer, just to do it. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, he tells me all the time they didn't believe in you. They didn't trust you. Whenever they would talk about you, they would make it sound like you couldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? He would always tell me that. And it was just like, but always knew he knew that I could do it. You know what I mean? And him telling me that always just made me want to prove everybody wrong. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It was just sometimes I didn't have like like the measures to do right and stuff like that, but he was always just there and he just listened to me out, and that's kind of all just what I needed. You know what I mean? Like now people like being young, when you hear about therapy, is like you think of going and sitting down in the office and talking to a white person. You know what I'm saying? That's what comes up to your
Yeah.
mind. But in a way, it's just talking to somebody. You know what I mean? Like even sometimes when I still talk to the homies nowadays, is like whenever I feel like I'm about to blow up and I talk to the homies, it's like it's just, you know what I mean. That's a type of therapy as well. That's the type of stuff that we just need to let it all out sometimes. You know what I mean? And at a young age, I didn't know how to do that. You know what I mean? I kind of held everything in. At the time, I was just so mad with everybody. You know what I mean? I was just still angry. You know what I'm saying? And to this day, you know what I mean? I still kind of am angry. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna say I'm not, but with Jonah, he always just sat there and listened to me. You know what I mean? He believed in me. That was the most important thing for me. I think it was that he believed in me. He really truly did. You know what I mean? And whenever he would talk about me, you could hear it in his voice that he was like proud. You know? So it was just
Oh,
like
I love
for
that.
me, that was just always like, damn, like he's not even related to me. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't even know this dude like that. And he's like talking about me like this and signing me up for stuff to go here and there, knowing damn right that I have to act right. And he don't even like second think it. You know what I mean? An opportunity comes up and he signed me up. And it was just like, I feel like that's what saved me the most at that time, because I don't think I would have been able to complete it, to be honest. You know what I mean? I was just so much. I was on the ankle bracelet. I was doing UAs. You know what I mean? I was doing all types of stuff, and and I know it was him because at the time there was another person that was working in with him as well, and like we would bump heads. You know what I mean? Like we wouldn't. It wasn't like that. I didn't feel that off of him. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why with Jonah, I was like, damn, like this dude's for real. Like this dude really does care. You know what I'm saying? And he really does try to help out. And it wasn't just with me; it was with everybody around me as well. You know what I mean? There's a lot of us in the same program, and sometimes he would like kind of like use me in a way to kind of bring him closer. You know what I mean? Kind of like just show him. You know what I mean? In a way, just it was at the time it was, but then when I was with him, it was like different. You know what I'm saying? And like 2 years ago, I remember the thing about me is I always had a gun on me. You know what I'm saying? And when my son was born, I was in the middle. Like, you know what I mean? I was like I wanted to put it all up, but I just didn't want to. You know what I mean? Get caught out here like that. You know what I'm saying? So it was just like, and I remember he was talking to me. He was talking to me that day, and we were gonna go. We were on a job site, and he had to call me to work with him, and we are gonna go to a job site. And on our way there, he was just talking, and he's really religious. You know what I mean? And I'm religious as well, and he just kept saying like, "You're doing great. Like you're just doing good." You know what I mean? The devil's always gonna find a way to bring you back. he's on, and you having that on you is just like, it's just kind of like feeding into him, you know what I mean? It's kind of feeding into what they want, and not just him, but like how you guys are talking about everybody, you know what I mean? The bigger everyone that, like, you know what I mean? That's what they want. Is just you to get caught with that gun. You would want that, have that gun on you, and it's just like, I was just like, damn, like, and the thing about me, like I said, I never had no positive role model for. So with my son, it's just I want to be present. That's the thing about me, is present. You know what I mean? I want to be present, and he just kept telling me like, it's not really necessary. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, and I've never really, like, everyone would always tell me like, why do you have it or this? I'm like, just mind your business. You know what I mean? Like, I have it, just mind your business or whatever. But with him, whenever he was coming out of his words, it's like, damn, like, I could really just, I was on probation. I was on the ankle bracelet. You know what I mean? And I still had it on me. Like, and it's just like, if it comes down to it, I'm going back, and I'm hit. You know what I mean? I'm hit, and it's just like my son, everything's gonna grow up without me, and it's just like whenever he was talking and coming out of his mouth, and it's just like, you know what I mean? You got something bigger to go for. You got a bigger life. It's not just this that you see around you. You know what I mean? It's not just Albuquerque. It's not just Burke. You know what I mean? It's just there's a whole world out there. You know what I mean? And it's just that hit me hard. I remember that day I went home, and I never went out with that shit again. You know what I mean? And it was just like, damn, like thinking back to that, it's just, it's crazy to me, because like I said, that was the one thing about me, is I never went over without it. You know what I mean? And then whenever, like, he was a great support system. You know what I'm saying? Like, Jonah, I fuck with him. That's my dog. That's my dog. And even La Placita, you know what I mean? They have that space up there for us to go out there. You know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't for La Placita as well, I wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? Because that's the only reason why they did let me out, because they knew I didn't want to go to school. I was too young to work. Like, they knew they had to put me somewhere. You know what I mean? They had to throw me somewhere where, like, and they La Placita came up, and I didn't even know what was going on. And I got out, and I just started showing up every day, and you know what I mean? They offered their space, and Bino and everybody, you know what I mean? Russell and everybody, like, that was there. Everyone's did their dirt. You know what I mean? Everyone's been there. You know what I mean? And it's just seeing them as older men, and seeing them as like no OGs. You know what I mean? But at the time when you're young, you don't really care for OGs like that, because you think they're too old. You know what I mean? You're like, they don't know what we're going through. Like, that's how I used to think. You know what I mean? Like, whenever OG would try to talk to us, I'd be like, the fuckers are old. You know what I mean? They don't know how it is nowadays, but they do. You know what I mean? And it's just different now that I see them, and I just really appreciate La Placita and them for, you know what I mean, always having my back. You know what I mean? And even now, when I decided to come back with them, it wasn't even no questions asked. You know what I mean? They just put me on. So it's like, it's always there for us. You know what I mean? For the community. You know what I mean? And it's just, and like I said, I didn't know there was stuff like this like all over either. You know what I mean? And now that La Placita, I go around with them, and they expose like their exposure out there and everything. I see everything that the community is really trying to come together. You know what I mean? And it's not just us trying to make a change. And I think that's a really important thing for me, is just like the youth. You know what I mean? Because like I said, I have little brothers, and then my little sister, and then my son that's coming after that. You know what I mean? And it's just hard, you know what I mean? And with a bill like that was to pass, you know what I mean? What if one little single mistake, and my little brother or anybody could be gone for the rest of their lives, 30 years, 20 years, you know what I mean? And at least coming out after 30 years, 20 years, like, you know what I mean? You've done lost all your life, pretty much, you know what I mean? Your whole juvenile life. You know what I mean? I was locked up from 15 to 16, and I felt like I lost a more important year in my life, you know what I mean? It just came out, and it was straight up hustling after that, you know what I mean? Just working, just trying to make it out, and it's just, you know what I mean? It's just hard, so, yeah.
That's
Kind of went off topic, but
No, you
No,
didn't.
no,
That
that's
was wonderful.
perfect.
I congratulate you, seriously. And as a mom, I would say to you, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. Really, it's encouraging for me, because I want my son to come out and have that same attitude, because he's going to miss out on 10 years of his life. And I want him to come out and have that same mentality that you have. And I'm just really proud of you. And you know what? You're blazing the trail for your younger siblings and for your child. And that's beautiful.
He said something really key about what we talked about yesterday, is about safe places for our young people. Me and Eric have had this conversation a lot too. But we think about back in the day when community centers used to be open, and every neighborhood had a community center. You guys didn't even get to experience this, but back in the day, you could go to community centers and kick it there. Mm-hmm. Everybody was welcome there, and it was usually like OGs from the hood that worked in the community centers. There'd be basketball tournaments. All the hoods used to play each other back in the day at the community centers, would play basketball against each other. Like, that used to exist in our neighborhoods. We used to have like community spaces in every neighborhood that had resources in it, gyms, pottery. Like, you could do all kinds of stuff in the community. Our arts room, it had air hockey. You could go just kick it in there. And now the city passed an ordinance, a rule now in their procedures, policies, and you can't go to community centers anymore unless you're over. You have to be over 16 with your parent or guardian has to accompany you if you're under. So our kids lost all that access to all of the county and city community centers. So what are we paying for?
Right.
Right? Every single time we go vote, there's a bond for community centers. We're putting all this money into these empty buildings that are closed in the evenings, closed on the weekends. Who goes there? Old people to go work out in the gym, seniors. And like, how great would that be if our kids could have access to community center where
Yes.
people from the community are already there, who are already elders, right, that are in the centers, like it used to be.
Right.
It used to be like that, and they closed all that off, and then they have the audacity to complain about our kids being in the street, our kids not having nothing to do, our kids being bored, our kids, right, and it's dollars.
Right.
They want us to pay for those services after our tax dollars already paid for those services.
Yeah, I mean, like La Pasita Institute has been around for 20 years, and they know we're in the community. They know we are available to do programming and work with kids. Like, they know this. I don't get referrals from them. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't gotten a referral from probation for like a year. So, by our collaboration, the mothers and the public defender's office, I have been, like, for one, not counting on the system, which is great, right? We have our own system, we have our own way of getting referrals and for the word to get out. And, but we also have the understanding of what it takes to be effective, right? And dealing with families and young people that are, traumatized and have been traumatized generationally. Um, but what we also need is not just like the juvenile justice system. I think it's organizations like us that need to come together and solidify that. Like Albuquerque Justice for Youth, like we really need to use that as a base for launching something that is totally 100% community led, to where probation's like, I want to be a part of that. I want to do this. I want to do that. It's like, no, homie, this is for the community. This is for us. You know what I mean? You're not welcome here. Um, and I can see it becoming so strong and such an indicator for success in our young people. Um, it'll just expand to having straight connections to academic paths, to trades, to you know, uh, small business owners, entrepreneurship, things that our young people are already kind of passionate about that can set them up in their, in their hustle. Like we gotta support them to be successful against these odds.
Right.
And the system is working very well, right? It was made to enslave. It was made to keep people under wraps. Like, the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. We need to turn that upside down. We need to take the power away from them, and make it so that we have our own resources. Because being contingent on the system inviting us or considering us, um, it just kind of it makes us complacent. It makes us kind of at the will of them and asking when we can do what we can, or if we can. We just need to do it on our own and strengthen those bonds.
Right.
And we want them before they get arrested. Like, we want our kids fucking with us before they
Yes.
become system impacted. Like, we
Right.
want that. Like, that's the goal, right? Like, the goal is to create healthy communities.
Right.
We're abolitionists, but we talk about abolition already exists. We know that there's places in the community where They're well resourced. They have well funded libraries and lots of programs, and their schools have lots of dollars flooding into them. Like, my kids moved to their dads to La Cueva School District so they could get access to good sports programs because at Albuquerque High, where my other kids went, my daughter got criminalized when they were about to go to district, and somebody stole a Snapchat picture of her and turned it into the cops, and they brought in police to like interrogate her about drinking as a kid. Like, we had to go and pull her out of APS and everything just to stop them from being able to arrest her. And we had to like do a full interference on it. My other son also got arrested at Sandia. They charged him with launching missiles. That's what his charge was. He threw a landscaping rock over his shoulder, and it bounced and hit the security guard in the leg. And his charge was a felony. And they charged him with launching missiles. They called me at work, and I was like, "Where did he get a missile from?"
Jeez.
Maybe my son has a missile at school. Yeah. Yeah, they launching missiles. So, but we were able to disrupt, right? But it was because, fortunately, we were already woke and had connections, and we knew Albino, we knew all these people. Like when my kids were getting criminalized when they were in school, we were able to go in there and fuck them up. Like, nah. My daughter already had the game. When they called her into the principal's office, she said, "Am I arrested or detained?" They said, "Nope." She got up and walked right out, called me on the phone. We went right over there with the whole posse, made the principal cry, removed her from APS. I said, "Shh, we out." Nah, you can't have this one.
That's awesome, Celinda. That's awesome. I love that.
But we need everybody to have that access.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, but everybody needs that. Like people, we have to continue like to teach our kids know your rights trainings. We got to teach them how to protect themselves when they're being criminalized, when they're being targeted in schools. Like, who are the safe adults that they can be like, yo, they fucking with me again at school? Because a lot of the parents out here, especially single, mamas that have 13 jobs trying to keep the lights on and stuff, they're isolated too.
Yeah.
So we have to build that tribe. We have to build that community that just surrounds our kids with love and resources, and just make sure that they know that we got them.
Right.
We got them. They're not alone. They're not isolated. They have something to live for. Like, they're not going to die at 18. Mm-hmm. They're not going to die at 16 because we got you.
Right.
We're going to keep you alive.
Right. That's why I'm so grateful for organizers like you and La Placitas, and, it encourages me, and it gives me hope, that one day my son will want to help somebody else, help another kid, help another mom get through.
He's going to be the big homie.
Right. So I have a question for you and for Eric, and it is, how do we balance holding youth accountable while also providing them with opportunities for growth and change? And I know it might sound a little bit redundant, but I just want to zoom in on that. So go ahead, Eric.
Okay, so I think that like offering opportunities and being able, because like for somebody to be future minded, right, and somebody to like think about, like get out of that kind of fight or flight all the time, right? Like you have to kind of have a hope for something. You have to kind of have a direction to move towards, and that will kind of elicit more choices that need to be, handled. Like, so say you get into your mindset that you want to be a welder, right? What does that mean? Where is that going to take you? First of all, you have to commit to that. You have to commit to yourself that, you know what, I don't have my diploma. I don't have a state ID. I don't even have my birth certificate. I don't have none of this stuff. I don't know where to start for any of it. But, kind of making that commitment to self and then starting a plan to do that is the first steps to transitioning and having a young person kind of take responsibility for some of their actions and what the things are going on, right? Like, so I think that like when a young person is mature enough to start thinking about those things and is capable of making a commitment to participate in something, that's an access point. That's a point and an opportunity for somebody to kind of do the necessary things that they have to do. Then that makes other things like, okay, well, guess what? You have weekly or every 3 days, you're going to have to drug test. You need to check in with your probation officer. You need to get to school and actually attend. Like that makes some of that stuff more manageable, right? Because if you were able to kind of make a commitment, you kind of know what you have to put into the game to get into the general direction of where you're going. But having those resources, having those that support from people that like are knowing what's going on, like Chris said, like having somebody to talk to, you know what I mean, on a couple day basis, sometimes is a very strong ally for anybody who's struggling with any type of challenges in their life. Um, so I think that like it starts with a commitment from the young person and the family willing to kind of do that support, and then taking on a kind of uh, a path that moves them into the right direction, like and continuing that. And I say that's very broad just because like I don't think that the court systems or probation does any of those things, right?
Right.
So kind of leaving it in their realm. I mean, they might hit on something, right? They might support you doing well, but ultimately the youth and the family is doing one doing the work. Um, because like I know Chris made a comment saying that you know what, it was us. It wasn't us, man. It was you. YRC was not, nor has it ever been mandatory for terms of release. It's voluntary. All of it's voluntary. Every day you wake up, you have a choice. You have a choice of what you can and should do, or what you could do. Right? You have knowledge more than yesterday, but you ultimately have a choice. You wanted to do better, so you did better. Like supporting young people to make those decisions, make those mistakes, and continue to support them, in each stage as they move through rites of passage is ultimately what's going to, get all these recidivism rates to like drop. Um, so yeah, I think it starts with enough options and understanding and support for a young person and a family to commit to those things. After that, it's just the consistency, being able to tap into support, because I have, families that they're doing quite well. You know what I mean? They don't necessarily need to hear from me, right? But they know that if they ever need to, like I'm here. You know, Chris came back, Chewy came back. I know so many young people that come back when they are just a little bit more mature and a little bit more ready for accepting a participation or a challenge. And it's on a whole different level because they brought themselves here. They didn't like they weren't told to. It wasn't a responsibility. um, so yeah, I think it really, we just need a lot more of our organizations to kind of step up and create space inside their organizations, because not everybody vibes with LPI. You know what I mean? Not everybody vibes with SWAT. Not everybody vibes with like um, everything that's available out there. But having more options and a broader network
Right.
makes the chances even more that something will hit. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. What do you think?
Yeah, I have
Celinda?
a few things. I just want to say too, as like somebody who raised a lot of people and who's a community mama, like the one thing I know that I always say to my young people is just like helping them know also like understanding our own human development, right? Like humans learn through failure, not success.
Mm-hmm.
It is critical and important for us to fail.
Yes.
We're supposed to fucking
Yep.
fall down. We're supposed to fuck up. That's how we get wisdom. That's
Right.
where learning comes from. like as humans.
Right.
So this idea that this society puts on us that, oh, you have to be perfect. You got to show up every day to school. You got to be perfect every day. Like, we expect things from kids that we don't even put on each other as adults, right? Like, you could have your coworker when you go to work and they're like, I'm having a rough day, girl. It's one of those days, and we give them all kinds of grace. But when it's kids, oh, what do you mean you don't feel good to go to school? What do you mean you can't do your homework? What do you mean you're and we expect things from our young people that we don't even expect from other adults.
Right.
So we have to like first unlearn all that shit, right? And then also help our kids know that that's okay. And I think it's also like really important for us to continue to tell them every fucking day, like, I will always have your back unconditionally.
Yeah.
And it does not have to be just from parents,
Right.
from big brothers, from cousins, from homies, from big homies. Like, we have to continue to speak life into our young people and let them know, I love you unconditionally,
Right.
especially when you fuck up. And I will be here. I will have your back. Like, how did my daughter know she could just walk out the office and call me? Because I spoke that into her every day.
Yeah.
Every day since she was a toddler. When I taught her, follow your instincts. When you know you're in danger. Like, we got to do that with our kids. So they understand when there's danger. And speak that into them and build it into them. And then also, like, especially for, like, I say from like 9 years old all the way up. Like, by 9 years old, kids already have developed their personality and human growth. That happens by 5. By the time they're 9, they already have like a sense of values and like humanity that's already put in them by their environment. So by then, we should be in mentorship mode. Like, we have to end this thing that's been handed down for generations of punitive. Like, whipping our kids and, like, doing things that, like, and I'm not saying everybody in this, but we've all been pushed as parents to fall back into the shit that was our trauma.
Right.
From generations before us. Our grandfathers were whipping kids with belts and punishing, and, like, punishment was always the tool.
Right.
That was passed down through our ancestors, and we have to understand where that came from, right? So, like Eric talked about culture, like teaching kids about their own culture, and like, this is not natural for us. Our communities lived in tribes, and they helped each other, and they built each other up, and they spoke life into each other. That's where we come from. That's the shit that we're built from. And we have to reconnect our youth into that, and that understanding that that is actually who you are. That's who you are as a person. Like, you're not disposable. You have lots to live for. You have a responsibility, not just to yourself, but to your family, to Mother Earth, to your community. Like, we all collectively are responsible. It doesn't matter if you're 9 or 12 or 14 or 16. Like, you are powerful.
Right.
Why are we telling our kids how powerful they are every day? You're powerful. You have value. You matter. We have to speak that into them every day, all the time, especially when they are fucking up.
Right.
And then I just want to also just note, like, kids who need the most love are asking for it in the most unloving ways.
Yes.
And when you see that kid who's out there kicking the fuck up on the field trip, and you're the parent that's out there on the chaperone, that's who you go and, like,
Yes.
wrap up, right? Like, we have to be conscious as the adults in the community to look out for those kids. Those kids that are kicking up, that won't go in the line, that won't color in the line, all that, those kids that's who we have to just go and pour all the resources and love into. And we have to be looking for them all the time, every day, because they're in the grocery store. Like, I have in stores helped moms that were, like, losing it in stores because their kids were kicking off. But when the community comes and, like, supports them,
Yes.
like, we shouldn't be embarrassed to do that. Like, hey, mama, you need some help? It looks like you're frustrated. Do you want me to help you? I'm a mom too, and, like, signal to each other. Like, we got each other out here.
Yes.
Even if you're by yourself somewhere, like, we have to do that for each other, and we have to break down those, like, social walls that tell us that that's not okay, because it is okay, and we are a community. And this is how we catch kids before they ever get arrested at the store or arrested at school. But the last thing I want to leave us with on that note is just Brian Stevenson is the lawyer who ended. I don't know if y'all knew this, but we were still putting kids on death row in this country.
Oh my God.
All the
I
way
did not
up
know
until
that.
I think it was in 2009 or 2012. It was not that very long ago, like 10 years ago. Finally, we got the Supreme Court. Brian Stevenson argued the case that ended kids going to death row. This country has executed all the way down to a 9-year-old in this criminal legal system. And so Brian Stevenson is the person who's worked with youth and on these cases and worked with kids who are sentenced to death by incarceration, who are sentenced to death, and he got that overturned. But he is really profound, and he talks about this recipe for fairness and justice. And the first thing he talks about is proximity. We have to be proximate and get close. What you all are doing, we get close to those that are in the struggle. Because not only is it for them, but it's healing us too.
Right.
And so we always have to go to the people. Like we were saying at the beginning of this, like those that are most impacted have to be in the middle, at the center, and be elevated all the time. Proximity. We have to go to them. We have to change the narrative. Like this whole idea of bad kids, oh, those are bad kids, or those are kids with disabilities, they can't, like teaching language like differently abled, or teaching kids like, oh, you're on a spectrum of sexuality and gender and it's okay and you don't have to hide. You're accepted and loved here. Teaching kids like poverty, right? Like, oh, you don't have sneakers, that's okay. Like you can still go with us. You can
Right.
still hoop.
Yeah.
Let's go figure out how to get you some, in a legal way. Because we all know we would all go get it, right? But how do we figure out, like, through a mutual aid network where community can pour resources into what kids need,
Right.
where kids can get access to the things that they need to feel good and confident? How do we do free haircuts all the time in community, before kids have to feel all that shit? So changing the whole narrative around even the way we have the dialogue and these conversations, shutting down people like Sam Bregman when they're saying a false narrative, like helping people understand that's false, that is fake. Like Vanessa said, everything that he said, that's not even real. That's not what the stats say. And so changing the narrative and being uncomfortable. That's back to that, like in the grocery store, like talking to our neighbors, talking to our friends, talking to kids that you might not want to fuck with us. Because you could say things, I know this all the time, because I'll say things to young people and I'll feel like, man, they wasn't even trying to hear me at all.
They're like, yeah, whatever.
Clifton was at the DK and these kids were in there and they were kicking up, and he had a Draco right here and he dropped it in the fucking store, dropped the Draco hit the floor. But Clifton just said like a few words to them. You know what I mean? But he picked it up and the kids left the store and stuff. But all we can do is plant those seeds. We don't know if that kid's going to carry and think about what Clifton said to him that day. And I don't know if the kids that I've just been like, yo, homie, da-da-da-da. I don't know if that's going to land. But we have to still say it, and we have to plant the seeds.
Exactly.
We have to plant the seeds all the time. Because there's been times people will come back and they'll be like, yo, you said that to me back in da-da-da-da,
Right.
Or whatever. And sometimes...
Because what happens sometimes, I think, is that
Yeah.
you can plant the seed, and maybe even 5 years down the line, somebody waters it, and they go back, and they remember the words that you spoke to them.
This woman who had gone to an Abolition 101 workshop with me back like 6 years ago, she inboxed me recently and she's like, yo, like my son got arrested and he's facing a big charge, he's facing a big case, I'm trying to figure this thing out. And I kept thinking about all the things you were saying in that thing, and now I can see it for what it is. Like you said, once you get in there, you can see it very clearly. You can see that this is just a structure of violence and harm and trauma. It's not doing anything else. It's doing zero else. And so, like, planting those seeds, doing things that are uncomfortable, like having those uncomfortable conversations, like, it's hard to confront youth, and be like, yo, like, you're fucking up. Because you don't want to push them away either. And we know that as mamas, like we want to be careful with the way that we handle it. But we have the tools and we have to have the confidence to be uncomfortable and let our kids be uncomfortable and teach them that that's okay from very
Yes.
young. It's okay to, like, you're not always going to feel good in this world. We live in a very hostile society.
Yes.
Like, the shit is real out here. Like, I want you to know that at home, no matter what, in your safe place, in this community center, and at La Placita, wherever that place is, we have to just be fostering that. Like, this is your safe place. It's going to be really uncomfortable a lot of places, and sometimes I'm going to have to confront you and hold you accountable here, but we're going to work through it together. And I'm always going to have your back, and I'm going to continue to speak life into you.
Right.
And then the last thing is just hope, and he talked a lot about hope, right? Hope is the thing that makes you stand when they tell you to sit down.
Yeah.
Hope's the thing that makes you keep fighting for tomorrow when you don't know if you're going to survive today. So we have to figure out ways to continue to bring hope all the time, and speaking that into our young people.
I love that. I love that, Celinda. You're so amazing. Always encouraging, always. Well, I'm just so happy to be here with all of you today, holding space and just listening, and all the encouragement and the powerful words and the knowledge. The knowledge, is amazing. I don't want to put you on the spot, Chris, but I'm going to. I want to close
He's
out
brilliant.
with you, because I want you to share something that you would have told your younger self with the community.
Right. So just something that I would have told my younger self.
Yeah. And the mindset that you're at today.
I just kind of slow down. You know what I mean? Slow down. I was always just in a rush to try to grow up in a way. You know what I mean? I was just always just so ahead of myself. I feel like I was just always want to be the first one out the door. You know what I mean? I always want to be the first one to do this and do that, and it's just like it put me in situations and that I should have never been in. You know what I mean? I was wanting to hang out with all the older homies that were way older than me. You know what I mean? When I was just young, and I think it would have just been slowed down, because like if I would have, there's so much things that I wouldn't have been through, and a lot of stuff that happened to me. You know what I mean? I always wanted to, like I mentioned earlier, I always wanted to be like my brother in a way. So I always wanted to I was just rushing it. You know what I mean? Rushing it, and you know what I mean? Everything I've been shot twice already. You know what I mean? And I just, you know what I mean? When I was locked up and all that, I was facing that murder charge, and it was just like, at that point, I felt like my whole life had, like, it was done. You know what I mean? Like, I remember when I used to go downtown to court. I never went juvenile court. I never went next door. You know what I mean? They would shackle me up and they would put me in the van. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't even be able to walk right. You know what I'm saying? And it was just like, I used to have the chains on my feet and the chains around around my waist, and my hands tied onto it. You know what I mean? It was just, I used to walk into court, and I remember seeing my mom like that and seeing everybody see me like that. You know what I mean? It was just, I was always just in a rush. You know what I mean? At 15 years old, you look me up now, my whole face is on Google. You know what I mean? Like, that shit will never go away. You know what I mean? It's just, I was like, damn, like, you know what I mean? At 15 at the time, I was like, all right, everybody knows who I am. You know what I mean? Anybody could search me up and I'm there. But now it's like, fuck, like that's like, that's not what I wanted. You know what I mean? Like, I was just so in a rush to get everything done, to grow up in a way, to just kind of be a man. And it's just like, it took me down all these loopholes. You know what I mean? It literally, you know what I mean? I tell my little brothers and everybody sometimes, like, it's kind of hard to believe that I'm here. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to believe that, and not just here, that I'm making it out. You know what I mean? That I'm fighting for everything, that I'm just moving along. Because everyone that was in my situation, I remember everyone that I was locked up at the D home. Everyone's either just they're dead or they're locked up. You know what I mean? I really can't think of a whole lot of homies that made it out and that are out here like me. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of them really just, that, like you guys said, it paved the way for them in a way. Whenever they were in the system, the juvenile, they just couldn't get out of it. You know what I mean? There was always just so much things on top of each other, and nobody believed in them. A lot of them didn't have a lot of support like I did. You know what I mean? So a lot of them went down the wrong way, and a lot of them I see. I hate to watch the news, because every time I watch the news, I see somebody that I know. You know what I mean? A younger homie, and I'm like, damn, that's him now, and like, damn, he's getting 20 years, 30 years. You know what I mean? It's like, that's everybody now. That's all the homies that you grew up with. Everyone's getting 20, 30 years. everyone's, you know what I mean, catching a body, and it's just because everyone's just trying to get ahead of themselves. Everyone's trying to move so fast. Everyone's trying to grow up and make money. I think that's what it is. It's just everyone's trying to make money. You know what I mean? Everyone's trying to grow up, and a lot of us, when we're at that age, 15, 14, there's no job for us to do. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing else for us to do than to rob, or than to sell this and this and that. And it's just everyone's just trying to get ahead of themselves. And I feel like that's where it messed me up the most. You know what I mean? I put myself in situations that I should have never been in. And thankfully, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not totally out. I'm still in the system. You know what I mean? So I do 2 UAs a week. I still go to court every week, do my counseling every week. You know what I mean? I call my colors every morning. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still in the system, and I'm still going through it. I'm still fighting it, but that's not what's going to define me. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's not what's going to make me. You know what I'm saying? Like, um, my brother's coming home in 10 months, and he's been locked up 10 years already. You know what I'm saying? So I see him, and I kind of try to learn off his mistakes, because I have a 5-year-old little sister. You know what I mean? He's never met her. You know what I mean? He's never seen her, never nothing. And the love that she has for him, and when she talks to him on the phone, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just it's crazy how that a relationship that strong can grow over a phone. You know what I mean? Over a phone call. Um, you know what I mean? I just, in my head, I'm just kind of done. And, you know what I mean? Putting mom through pain. You know what I mean? That's why I'm trying to break this, like we call it, a generational curse. That's why I'm trying to break it, because, like I said, I have 3 little brothers. You know what I'm saying? Like, me and my older brother already put my mom through a lot. You know what I'm saying? My mother's been through with me, she's been through with it as much as I have. You know what I mean? The day that I got locked up, the day that the marshals pulled up for me, they took her as well. You know what I mean? They sat there and questioned her, and everything just as well like they did to me. You know what I mean? They treated her just like they treated me, and it's just I can't believe, like, I just can't think of all the embarrassment and everything I put her through. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, for me, I'm just trying to make it up for it. Um, yeah, like, it's just, I feel like that's what it was. Everyone was just moving too fast around me. Everyone from the hood was just, everyone just wanted to be out there. You know what I mean? Everyone just wanted to grow up and make money. I think that's what it was. You know what I mean? And we never had no father figure. No one was in the hood telling us, no, don't do this. If anything, we're hanging around with all the motorheads that, that's why we felt like that's where we belong, because they were older. We thought they knew everything, and we just, they accepted us for the way we were. We didn't have to hide it from nobody. You know what I'm saying? And that's just the way that it is. I feel like we just got to slow down a little bit. You know what I mean? Even to this day, I'm only 21. You know what I mean? And I feel like I try to get out my head of myself all the time. You know what I'm saying? I just have to remind myself of all the things that I've accomplished and how far I've came, because, like, you know what I mean? I was looking through Facebook, you know how they have the police posts and all that shit, like, how the cops posted. They posted me one time, and I was going through the comments, and it was like almost like 200 and some comments. You know what I mean? Just dissing. You know what I mean? Just dissing a whole lot. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, damn, you know what I mean? A lot of people don't really think people could change. You know what I'm saying? And I tell my lady all the time, I don't have the same mentality that I had when I was 15 years old. If they would have threw the key away when I was 15 years old, I would have never been able to be here. I would have never been able to think the way that I think you know what I mean? Think the way that I am now. I would have stayed in that same mindset for all those years, because there would have been no other choice. You know what I'm saying? Like, they want us to go to jail or prison or whatever, and pass with flying colors, whenever they're putting us with a bunch of people that, you know what I mean, are mad at the world, that are mad at everything, mad at society, and then we only have each other, so we only, like, be aggressive to each other, and that, like, you know what I mean, it's just, I feel like there should be more, like, help for the youth. You know what I mean? More opportunity, more sports, more whatever. And it's just all this money that's going around, and it's not getting put to use. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's just, I feel like they should be concentrating on the like helping the youth instead of locking them up. You know what I mean? Helping them,
Right.
and not just like with everything. You know what I mean? And sometimes just someone to listen to. You know what I mean? Like, it's just they go to school, and like you guys say, sometimes they feel like jail. You know what I mean? They go to jail, like school, and it's just like teachers don't like you, and nobody likes you. It's like, what am I even gonna be here for? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of interesting how you guys use that term, getting pushed out, because that's how literally it feels like. You know what I mean? You're getting pushed out, like nobody wants you there, so why even be there? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I feel like I just tell myself to slow down a little bit, because, you know what I mean, you're gonna get there eventually. You know what I mean? Everything happens whenever it's supposed to happen, and it's just whenever you're trying to get ahead of yourself, you end up just backtracking yourself. You know what I mean? And you get put in a deeper hole that you sometimes can't dig yourself out of. You know what I mean? I was thankful I was blessed with an opportunity, and, you know what I mean, not be locked up for the rest of my life. You know what I'm saying? But so I remember the first court date I went to there, like the max of all my years were 106 years. You know what I mean? And I was 15 years old.
I remember I was like, what, like the fuck, like I'm 15, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like it was I was going like I remember they would put us down in the tunnel to go to district, and I see everybody, all the prisoners in the holding, you know what I mean? And I'd be like, they'd look at me and I'd look at them, and they're like, what the fuck, like this, like, you know what I mean? Like you could tell the way they looked at me, like this nigga's just a kid, you know what I mean? He's just a kid, like, and I was like, you know what I mean? A lot of that changed the way I think now, you know what I mean? Like I said, after that, it was just hustle and just go on from there. After when I got out, I didn't feel like I could go back to school and like reset and be like a regular person because I felt like I had been through all this stuff that no one really related to me at my age. You know what I mean? No one really. Everyone was in the sports, and I was over there trying to, you know what I mean, make some food, trying to eat, trying to, you know what I mean, make it out, and it's just. But yeah, everything just slow down in a way. You know what I'm saying? Because we are moving too fast sometimes.